You are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation.
Welcome to Chief Speaks.
All music performed and produced by Yuya.
Enlightenment and transformation. Enlightenment comes from allowing yourself to journey through the dark shadows of death. The primordial of wisdom's waters. For it is the treasures and mysteries that lie in the dark that transform and propel us to a new enlightened state. One should neither aspire to live in the light nor the dark, but should journey to in order to evolve the overall reality into a self-actualized creation. Knowledge is your light, wisdom is your darkness. The bold interplay of the two in your life leads you to an enlightened understanding of yourself and the universe you've created. Male is your enlightenment. Female is your transformation. Child is your evolution. Woman, accept the light into your darkness, so it may enlighten you. Man, bring your light boldly into the darkness, so that it may transform you. Enlighten and transformation.
I love you so much because you just don't know what you've done for me. Thank you so much.
Wow. This is like the best call I've had in ages on BTR.
So this show was meant for me to be able to hear today, and I'm so thankful.
That's his home.
Therefore, now a new pathway has now been cut in order to get to the Almighty, where there may not have been one. So the communication with them, if they have enough power and strength to talk to us, the communication will be very clear.
That's one of the reasons I don't get into the current events thing too much, because it starts to become a perpetual alarm clock that we just keep hitting snooze on. I speak to the ascended masters, quote unquote. I talk about spiritual stuff, but I also speak about some very practical, we can do today things.
Be as natural as you can be with your spiritual. You can't always go by your feelings, because your feelings are corrupted. Your feelings are just as corrupted as everything else, your chakras and everything else. You got to know what's beyond you, and that's why we have elders. We can't do everything. You can't get everything out of books or weekend certification. You can have the most powerful, ancient, oldest, most, as far as you know, truthful tradition in your hands, and if you still have a dirty spirit, you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to learn anything. You're not actually going to grow. I try to teach in a way where I make myself obsolete. That's always been my goal, to make myself obsolete.
I really wanted to, kind of big you up. I think you're awesome.
There's a lot of elders out here right now that want to know what's going on. They're not getting on Twitter and stuff like that, but they want to be up on the new stuff. Sit down and have some conversations with them. It's not always about hearing their story. It's also about being news reporters for them and letting them know, like, yeah, this is what's happening right now. They may tell you something about what happened in Charleston that you couldn't even. Your spirituality has to create sane spiritual family. Okay, and that family exists first inside of you. You have to express the different expressions of that rainbow coalition of spirits inside of you first. Okay, don't let communities hijack that rainbow. Because the problem is, when we come into the conscious community, the dudes are doing the same thing that the women are doing.
I just want to say that I really enjoy your show every Sunday, and my friend and I call it going to church. When we call in, we'll be like, you going to church? And I'm like, where have y'all been at?
God cannot go against its own truth. So anytime you have an inkling that God is going against its own truth, then God is no longer behaving as God, so therefore the spiritual community doesn't recognize God. You dig where I'm coming from? Or can we have a new thought? Can we step outside of the books for a second and have a new conversation about hair weaves and wigs? Can we have a new conversation about homosexuality? Can we have a new conversation about vegan eating? What are we doing? It's a good day for exorcism.
347-945-7680. Call in and let's build.
Greetings, peace everyone, and welcome to another live segment of Chief Speaks. I am one of your co-hosts, Kim, and I'll be flying solo for a little while this morning. We Sister Felicia and Chief will join us a little bit later. they are taking care of some business. So I'm going to try to steer this thing solo for a little while. Again, this is a live show, so if you'd like, please call in early so that we can get to you quickly. The number on the Enlightenment and Transformation side is 347-945-7680. And on the high frequency side, it's 424-222-5250. So I'm going to start off with a few announcements to let you all know what's going on with our new nation and some of the things we have going on. For one, I will be hosting a webinar on September 13th from 7 to 9 p.m. on herbs. The title of it is actually The Spiritual Gifts of Herbs. And if you have been paying attention to any of the Facebook, from our groups, you'll see that we have been advertising, and with each advertisement, I will highlight a certain herb and give you a ritual around how to use that herb, in your spiritual practice, and as well as some health benefits that go along with it. So far, I think there are about 6 videos up, and so that's 6 free rituals that you're getting before the webinar even starts, and we have a couple more coming, and you can look for those this week, or this strong, rather. And I think this webinar is going to be a really good one. I'm excited about it. And some of the topics that I'm going to cover is how to recognize herbs, why certain herbs are associated with female and male deities, how to specify the use of herbs for men and women, and how to choose herbs for specific uses and spiritual practices. And I really thought that this was an important webinar, because when I came into the class and we started to do a lot of these rituals, my question was, why are we using honey for ocean? Or why are we using cinnamon? Or what's the significance of using, peppers or mint or whatever the ritual called for? That was always in the back of my mind. And I think it kind of has something to do with me being a chemist. Because, even as a young child, I always wanted to know why certain things, what was in everything. So I was a label reader even as a kid. I was like, if I can't pronounce it or even, or know what it is or couldn't find out what it was, I shouldn't be ingesting it. So I've always had that kind of mind. I guess it's a kind of destructive mind, because I always wanted to tear things apart and see what made them. So I think that this is going to be a really, really good webinar, especially if you're already in the training or if you're thinking about coming into the training, because knowing those things will also make your rituals more effective once you know why you're using certain things. So if you want to register for that, there's 1 week left. So make sure you go to inunation.org and RSVP for that. And you can also go to meetup.com and register there as well. And the name of our Meetup page is Enlightened Spirit. So again, if you're a student of the training already, I definitely think that this is something that you would want to check out, because, like I said, the first phase of the course is packed with rituals. And we do get into that in the first phase of the course, but not as in-depth as we're possibly going to go into in this webinar and for phases to come. So definitely, if you're already a student, I think this is something you should take advantage of. And, of course, if you're not a student, this is something, because perhaps you've already started doing rituals. This is something that can help you out. So, again, go to inunation.org. And that brings me to the Dulu House. And you can go to seduluhouse.com to register for the first phase of the spiritual training. And this is a really, really, really good introduction into indigenous spirituality, because, as you know, Chief is all about empowerment. He's not trying to make little Yuya followers or disciples. He's always encouraged us to do our own research, study everything. There's nothing that you could possibly study that he'll say, oh, you shouldn't be looking into that. Study everything. And this first phase of the course is ministry to self. And this is something that we often skip in coming into spirituality because it's the hardest. Ministry to self is about cleaning up your own mess, kind of searching, looking at your life kind of in this objective view and seeing, being accountable for the mistakes that you've made, knowing how to clean it up, and just refining your character. Or if or discovering your character, trying to understand, events and things in your life and taking accountability for some of the choices that we've made. And like I said, this is something that we often skip because there have been so many times when I've heard people call into the show and they're always discussing other people. Well, this person, I'm trying to bring this person into spirituality, but they don't want to read, or my family this or my family that. It's always an external view. But most of the problems that we have or difficulties that we have start with us. It's not so much about the other person. And I see that so often. People always want, first thing they want to do when they come into spirituality is be a healer when they have tons of problems themselves. So that is the first phase. That is what the first phase of the course is concerned with, is ministry to self, and how we can be, how we can be better people, or how you can just clean up your own mess before you get into, working with these spirits and all this good stuff. But you will get some of that too, but the focus is on you for the first phase of the course. So that's a very, 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 very important part of your spiritual training, like I said, that a lot of people sometimes skip. Also, I want to reiterate, I think Chief spoke about it Friday on Foundational Friday, that all of our shows are going to be transitioned off of Blog Talk to our YouTube channel starting November 1st. So what you can do now is, because some of these videos that we're making, after they air on Blog Talk, we're immediately putting them on YouTube. And for Masterminds Monday and the New Asafo, those are already transitioning to YouTube, our YouTube channel. And so if you go to YouTube and just type in Enlightenment and Transformation, that will take you to our Enlightenment and Transformation page on YouTube. And also, we have several others. There is Our New Nation, which Chief just uploaded one of his lectures from the Self-Actualization Tour. And the lecture is, I think it's entitled Zombies. Zombies Are Coming, or something of the sort, but it's related to zombies. So it's a full hour lecture. Also, there are pages, let me think of the other one. I think Chief Yuya Anu has several videos. Again, Our New Nation. I think OrishaReligion.com is another one. And Orisha Yoruba is another channel. So there are several channels there. If you just type that in, or if you search for Chief's name, I'm pretty sure you could find a lot of these videos. But you'll find some of the old, all of the old Enlightenment and Transformation shows, as well as snippets from the Self-Actualization Tour. If you missed those and you weren't able to make it, I think there are about 3 full lectures from Chief Yuya on those channels, and they're very, very good. So if you've never been able to make it out to one of his seminars, I would definitely encourage you to check those out, especially the latest one entitled Zombies, and that's on Our New Nation's YouTube page. So, and when you visit these pages, please subscribe to them and share them. I know sometimes, like Chief says, we kind of get this information and we want to hoard it a little bit because we want things deep or kind of copy some of the things that he said and pass them off as our own, but it's not African. That is not something that we do. As you know, with Anu Nation, that is our main premises. We are studying indigenous and African spirituality. So the idea behind that is to share, and it's the idea of community. So definitely share those videos, like them, share them, subscribe to the channel. All right, and that will start on November the 1st. So make sure that you are locked in, because we will no longer be on Blog Talk after that. Let's see, other announcements. Make sure you register for the webinar. Also, go to anunation.org. That is one of our websites, to make sure you keep up with all of the events that we're having. All of the events, webinars, retreats are there listed under the event tab. So make sure you go there to see what's coming up. And you can also, if you have any questions, you can email us from that website as well. Questions, comments, testimonies, thanks, whatever you'd like to share, you can email us there. Also, I wanted to make sure that you all know on Monday, Sister Felicia shared that Masterminds Monday is looking for a new co-host. So if you're interested, make sure you email us at submissions@enlightenmentandtransformation.com. And we ask that you have maybe a light background in broadcasting, or at least an interest in indigenous spirituality. Also, if you're a business owner, that's definitely a must. If you are a business owner, to help out, because they really kind of want that show to be like a panel discussion. Those shows have also been live, that Sister Felicia has been doing, but we haven't had many people to call in. And the information that they give out is very, 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 very valuable. And so it's kind of upsetting that people aren't calling in, sharing it. And it's possibly because, you know, when you hear this kind of information, you're busy taking notes, and you don't have time to really, you know, you're taking in so much information, and you want to process it before you ask the question. I do understand that. But they are looking for a co-host. So if you're interested, definitely send out an email to submissions@enlightenmentandtransformation.com. Also, another one of the websites that is fairly new, but it's being utilized quite a bit, is alphaomegastore.com. And on alphaomegastore.com, this is where you can find all of your spiritual supplies. If you're like me in kind of a remote area, and you can't find some of the things that you need for either phase one or just, you know, for your spiritual work in general, you can go to alphaomegastore.com and find some of those things there. Because I know sometimes it's very hard to find some of these ingredients, and that is definitely a place that you can find a lot of rare items, and they're not super duper expensive at all. So definitely take advantage of alphaomegastore.com. So I think that pretty much covers a lot of the announcements, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with Chief Speaks. And remember, the call-in number on the Enlightenment and Transformation side is 347-945-7680, and on high frequency side it's 424-222-5250. As of right now, I see we have a lot of callers, but only one hand up. So definitely make sure you get those calls in early so we can get to you. Okay, we'll be right back in just a few seconds.
Are you ready to take action and rise to the next stage of your evolution? Then monthly life coaching services at OsirisLife.com are just for you. Osiris Life does not just focus on spiritual development. We offer a holistic approach to helping you realize your goals and teach you the tools to overcome any barriers to your success. Services at Osiris Life are provided on a monthly basis and include, but are not limited to, spiritual consultations and one-on-one coaching, instructionals,
via podcasts and videos, life mapping and goal tracking, anonymity, spiritual work done on your behalf, and there are 3 package levels to choose from. Take the steps to get your life on track and flourishing by purchasing a subscription package today at Osiris Life to take action and rise to the next stage of your evolution. Then monthly life coaching services at OsirisLife.com are just for you. Osiris Life does not just focus on spiritual development. We offer a holistic approach to helping you realize your goals and teach you the tools to overcome any barriers to your success. Services at Osiris Life are provided on a monthly basis and include, but are not limited to, spiritual consultations and one-on-one coaching, instructionals via podcasts and videos, life mapping and goal tracking, anonymity, spiritual work done on your behalf, and there are 3 package levels to choose from. Take the steps to get your life on track and flourishing by purchasing a subscription package today at OsirisLife.com.
Peace, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Enlightenment and Transformation. And just for those of you who don't know, I am Chief Yuya. Please excuse me for my delay in coming into the show. I was working with someone doing consultation this morning that ran a little bit over, so I had to start a little later. And I'm also welcoming our High Frequency Radio Network family as well to the space, as well as our Enlightenment and Transformation family, and all of you who are in the chat room. I see, which is slowly people are filing in, and people who are on the phone lines, peace to you all. I see you all lit up. And of course, those of you who are listening from the internet, I say peace, of course. And if anyone cannot hear me or is having problems hearing me or whatever, please just give me a shout in the chat room and let me know how we're doing there. But in any event, welcome to Chief Speaks. You pretty much all know what this is about at this time, but I'll just let you know for the first time listeners, because we're always getting new listeners, so I'm finding out, especially when I'm listening to the stats, for anyone who wants to speak, right? All you have to do is call in at 347-945-7680, and you hit the number 1. Okay, 347-945-7680. Hit the number 1, and you'll be able to speak. And if you're called in on the High Frequency Radio Network side, just hit the number 1. It's the same thing there. So I just want to make sure, again, that everyone knows that they can call in. It doesn't matter. There's really no subject for this show. Sometimes that's come up. People have said to us, I wanted to call in, but I wasn't on subject, or I didn't, have anything to say about the subject. But there really is no subject for Chief Speaks. I give an insight every Sunday, and that insight usually is dealing with something that I may have spoken about on Thursday or Friday, those days prior. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what we have to stick to in terms of theme when it comes to Sunday segments. So anything you want to share is fine, as long as it's not anything pertaining to customer service. Don't call and ask me about, I ordered a book, where's my book, or when is your next DVD coming out, or something like that. Don't do that to me. For one, I don't have those answers because I don't handle that part of it, but that's not what this time is for that we meet. Okay, so we have a space for customer service, the 1-800 line you can call if it's a valid customer service request, or you can go to any other sites and hit the customer service button. But aside from that, wide open. Okay, it's wide open, as long as it's just respectful, and it's really along with the themes of us just growing, getting better, and going somewhere and doing something. Okay, I know those are usually not the themes all the time that we're moving towards or we're thinking about when we do shows like this, actually doing something. But that is a huge thing for me. That's a huge aspect of what it is that we're doing. You know, I'm working on a series of books now. I mean, I guess it's okay to talk about it, you know, because we're moving pretty well in them. But I'm doing these individual breakout Orisha books that I've been playing with the idea of them for a couple months now, probably. But and by the way, if anybody's listening from High Frequency Radio Network side, please go into the Enlightenment and Chat Room and just Enlightenment and Transformation Chat Room. Just let me know that you can hear us. Okay. This is one of the reasons why I made the announcement this strong too, that we'll be moving by November 1st. The pre-recorded shows, well, all of the shows on Enlightenment Transformation except for this one will be going straight to YouTube. Okay, so like Masterminds Mondays, Anu Asafo, Thunderground Thursday, Foundational Friday, those will all be going direct to YouTube. We're going to bypass Blog Talk because it's always something. Like almost every show, there's always something ridiculous happening. But yeah, if High Frequency is broadcasting on that side, anybody tuning in, please just come into our chat room and let us know that you can hear us over there too at our brother network. But yeah, so what I was saying was that I'm doing a series of breakout Orisha books, right? Because just kind of like, okay, you can hear on High Frequency. All right, awesome. Thank you, More Love. Appreciate that. More Love 13. Thank you very much. Just like, I'll say this to you. I think it's an important statement. Because, I'm not a snake oil salesman, and this isn't about sales and marketing for me. If it was, my approach would be much different. I'd have much more snazzier intro music, if it was about that. But one of the things that I always tell people, like a lot of times when people are like calling in and saying, we want, I want to get your book and I want to get this, but I don't have any money right now, whatever, right? Or I'm really trying to grow, or I need a reading and I don't have any money for the reading. Can we work something out? Or your class? The thing is, for one, the book on Kindle, the Kindle app is free to download to your computer, and the book is like $3. So if you can't come up with $3, then the truth be told, if you can't come up with $3, you got bigger issues than learning about an African religion. I mean, I'm just, I'm not even trying to be funny. It's like, seriously. And I wish more readers would tell people that. Like, or if someone says you need to be initiated and you don't have money for the initiation and they're telling you to jump through all these hoops to get the money for the initiation. Let's say the initiation is $1,500 or $2,000. Usually when it's the hoops, it's $10,000. They really need to be working with you on your finances. Let's start there, and then we'll worry about you becoming this enhanced, connected, deified person. But anyway, so when people a lot of times send those messages in, I will refer them to the shows. And I think because they're free, people think, well, that's, like it's the light information. I mean, I don't consider it to be light information. Any of these shows, I consider it to be helpful information. So, like, even with the Orisha stuff, when people ask me questions, I want to get a reading, I want to find out about the Orisha, about how many money, and I'm always like, listen, I did a lot of Orisha shows. I think it's like 15 of them. There's a lot you can learn a lot about the Orisha for free right there. More than what, and I'm not tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I can confidently say from one who owns a lot of books on Orisha, some of those shows give you way more than what you would get in any book. Honestly, because a lot of the books are redundant. A lot of them they stick to the real super, because everybody's repeating each other. But people get initiated and they get excited about the tradition. And they say, I'm going to write a book. And all they're doing is regurgitating what their godparent told them or what they read in someone else's book. So you get a book on Oya, and all you're going to do is find out about plums and eggplant and red wine and hurricanes. And that's it, Or you get a book on Shango, and you're going to learn about being the king and sexuality and drumming and, you know. So I feel like the shows do go deeper than that. However, I'm taking it a step even further. So I'm writing these breakout books, right, on different Orisha, a lot of Orisha. So, because there's going to be a lot of books that I'm writing. And my plan was really to release them all at one time, because I didn't want a situation where people would be like, "Oh, I like the such and such, but when are you going to release this one? Are you going to come out with a book on this and that?" You know. So, but it's a lot of writing. It's a lot of writing. In fact, I've been using, and for you writers out there, maybe a hint that may work for you. I've been using like my dictation software as well, just to try to, get through some of it, because I'm getting to the age and the point where I don't really like typing anymore. I realized that. I worked in IT for many years too, so that probably has something to do with it. But I don't like looking at computer screens and typing anymore. So I really get into that voice recognition work, which I know is dangerous because obviously I'm being cataloged. But I do these free shows every Sunday, so I'm being cataloged anyway. But that helps me to kind of close my eyes and just talk and write my books that way, because that's how all my books are written. I just kind of flow. Same way I do my shows, same thing. But I was, I feel like to say that I was working on a passage out of my Oshun book last night. And there's a passage that it's something about Oshun that I don't think I said in the show before, which has been said, but I don't think it's really been explained. Maybe, and sometimes stuff can't be explained because, again, people are regurgitating. But the passage I was working on, and I said, you know what, I need to really make this the focus of the book. Because none of the books right now have titles. So I have like folders set up, on my drive at home. And the folders say like Ogun book, Oshun book, Shango book, Babalu Aye book, Dada book, Obatala book, Eshu book, Oya book. You get the point. Because I haven't actually come up with titles yet. And usually I get the titles first, but not this time. So so I just been flowing with information. So I haven't gotten to like what the cover is going to look like and all that stuff yet. But let me just get the thoughts and the information out there. So the Oshun work, right? The Oshun book, as it's called currently. Maybe I need to do some type of poll, see what titles you guys come up with. That might be kind of cool. It could be a communal effort. Yeah, I'm not going to give any of you a percentage on the sales, but you could say you helped name it though. I'm just playing. Well, not really, but you. So there's an aspect about Oshun that I feel like enough people don't really dig into. Maybe they don't see it. Oshun is a civilizer, and that's the title I was thinking about this dawning. When I was like, maybe I should call it Oshun, the mother of civilization. But anyway, so I was like, and if somebody steals that now because I said it, so be it. But so I was like, yeah, man, Oshun is a civilizer. Like, people don't really realize that when you go through the Orisha pantheon, she is practically the only civilizer. You know what I mean? Like, we look at a lot of the other energies and we say, they do like wild stuff if you really look at them. They all like kind of, they all got a couple screws loose. they get wild. And Oshun, she gets emotional and things like that. But when it comes to refinement and civilizing, everybody has to go to Oshun. That's why, like, even in, I was talking to another family member last night, and she was at a, I don't know what they call it. I can't remember. But in the Catholic Church, when they like baptize a child. And so she's texting me the whole time, like this is some, BS basically, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, listen, man, you always got to go to the water first. Because she had suggested, I guess she's a godparent or something, and she had suggested that. She was like, why don't we go to the river and do this? And the woman who's a friend actually went to the priest and was like, okay, well, the godmother's saying, let's go to the river. And the priest freaked out. Of course, the Catholic priest is going to freak. He knows what that is. So I said, you should have just took the baby yourself. You should have just kept your mouth shut. You know, say, hey, I'm going to take the baby to the park one weekend, you know, and take it to the river. So anyway, but like the thing that's critical to think about, it's important, is that anytime you're coming into a place where you're trying to reconnect with your tradition, or reconnect with your identity, reconnect with your ancestors, or your best self, your refined self, your manicured self, you're going to have to go to the river first. You always go to Oshun first. Even when we receive what we call the sacred beads, or as many of you know, the ilekes, or the ile eke, which is the beads of the house, right? You always have to go to Oshun first to clean those beads and to consecrate them, to make them so that they are now civilized. So it's like sometimes I feel like we overlook the civilizing aspects of Oshun. And this is something that I'm bringing out in the book, and not just the statement I just made, but like even the fact that she has a very close relationship with the Orisha Oshun, right? Now, I did a show on Orisha Oshun. For those of you who don't know, I'm not familiar with that energy, you can go back and check out that segment. But Oshun deals with Oshun means like 10 different things, but that's the farmer, basically. That's the farm. Oshun means male penis. It means husband. You know, it's kind of crazy because some people do call their husbands DICKs. So I mean, but it deals with the hoe, not HO, but the hoe. You know, the farm tool, the hoe. You know, so it's that aspect of cultivating, right? But the Orisha Oshun also own bees, and they own honey. See, I know a lot of times we look at Oshun and we say, okay, bees and honey are sacred to Oshun, which is true. But the owner of bees and honey is actually Orisha Oshun. So, of course, I'm bringing this out in the book, and I'm breaking down why and everything like that. You know, because these books I really wanted to, like, I don't know, maybe it's a little ego, but I wanted to give information in these books that have not been given, period. And I feel like I've done that in all of my books. But when it comes to Orisha stuff, I guess there's a part of me too where I'm like, all right, can we next? What's next? You know, I get Orisha books myself, and now I don't even buy them. Like, I'll thumb through them and stuff. Like, oh, come on, again, you know, again with the Oshun in the mirror, we got that. You know, so it's just like when I wrote Grasping the Root of Divine Power, it was like, man, we need some of this from the perspective of an actual black person. You know, because like all of the books, at least the voluminous books, were being written by people who were, one, not African, two, not melanin dominant, and three, not even in the culture. So I'm like, it's a triple whammy. These were just college students who were writing their thesis. So they would go to Nigeria, get the information, write these books, and they became some of the quote unquote Bibles of the tradition. So I was like, nah, we gotta tell our story from our perspective, and at least as close to this perspective as I could get, me not being a Nigerian, you know? So yeah, the aspect of Oko and Oshun. And you know why I unmuted your mic, Sister Kim, who was here with us? Sister Kim and Sister Felicia, they do this thing. When I'm speaking on air, they chat back and forth in the back, and they like share a lot of I'm bringing you out a lot of really good important points about what I'm like. They'll be building on what I'm saying while I'm talking, but then when they come back on the air, they don't share any of that. So I just unmuted Sister Kim's mic. Yeah. So anyway, so she has a very close relationship. Okay, I'll unmute you. Don't worry, I'll mute you back. I just wanted to shout you out for a second. She has a very close relationship with Oko, right? And what that is because Oko is the one who takes unrefined land and unrefined farm and things like that and makes something with it. You know, that's what we do when we farm, right? We get a wild piece of land that's got trees all over and stuff. We got to cut those trees down. We got to square everything out. Then we got to cut those very straight rows so we can plant our food, things like that. But that's a sign that there's civilization there, you know, because we're creating storehouses of food. So, and the bee and the honey connection with Oko, that's in the book. I don't want to give everything away because I know how sometimes our people are with the hookups. Man, you don't even have to buy his book. See, just listen to the show for free. It's a hookup. We love our hookups. But yeah, that whole aspect of her being a civilizer, if you associate her with the vibration of love, right, you start to realize something. It's a point I brought out in the book, which I go further into it. But wherever you see degenerative forms of love in a society, you will see a society that is on the brink of anarchy. You can't find one without the other. Whenever you see a society where there is a perpetual and historical war gender war between male and female, where the society promotes division. That's what the society does between male and female. You already look at it. You know, even in the commercials, the movies, the shows, men and women are supposed to hate each other. That is so ridiculous. Even in sex, they have arguments, and then when the arguments gets to the most heated point, they grab each other, throw each other against walls, rip each other's clothes off, and then go at it. That whole bestial thing. But we got to fight first, you see. And then we say, "Are you as turned on as I am right now?" Even more. And then So, I don't know who was the man or the woman in that scenario just now, because both of the voices were deep, but I think you get the point I'm saying. So we have that perverted and distorted form of love in that aspect, right? Which is that perverted, distorted form of Oshun. So once Oshun is distorted, then that means civilization will be distorted. Okay? There's going to be anarchy, or you're going to be again on the brink of anarchy, because along those waterways are where you would have civilization, where you'd have nations built, and people come to certain agreements along the waterways. We find this with Patakis. I bring this out later in the book as well. With certain Patakis, you find, like with Ogun and with Eshu, you see, even Obatala, you see this theme, like when people are arguing, they're always either arguing at a farm or they're arguing at a river. It's a little pattern I noticed with a lot of the Nigerian stories. And of course, they get the issues get resolved at the farm or they get resolved at the river. Now, of course, there's times when people will be arguing in the marketplace, which is also Oshun's place, but that's something different, But yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that. I was working on that last night, and I said, man, this is something that people need to talk about a little more. And they need to talk about the fact that along the waterways, not just along the waterways, but when Oshun is present, then civilization is present. Refinement is present. And it goes further and say, oh, she's into arts and she's into adorning the body. It goes deeper than just adorning the body. What she's doing is she's refining the body, you see. Marks of civilization, art, things like that, right? So if the balance between male and female, or that congregative energy, is off and it's wrong, if the congregative energy is off and wrong, then civilization is going to be off and wrong. That's why they make statements like, make love, not war. Well, there's something to that. There's something to that. Because when there's no love present, there's no civilization present. You look at relationships a lot of times, right? What are, like, sometimes when a young man is like just going berserk or whatever, or just kind of out of alignment with his privilege, what do the older folks say? You know what? You need a good woman in your life. First thing they say, you need the love of a good woman, man. It sets you straight. And it's true. A lot of guys who have had issues in their lives, when you speak to them later, and you say, hey, you know, you looking better, or this or that, they say, yeah, man, my wife really helped me out, or set me straight, or put me on a certain diet, or this, that, and the third. But the woman will come along and be that civilizer. Without that, we can be very wild amongst us as far as men. You know, you think about, a lot of people feel that things that we do as men are motivated by sex. This is true to some degree for certain types of guys. Yeah, they are. A lot of things are motivated by sex, and even the way they dress, you know, the colognes they wear, the fact that they keep their hair cut, you know, or even brush their teeth, you know, can be motivated by sex. I remember being in a situation once with a guy who, I was in a situation where it was all just men. You know, there was about maybe 50 of us men in this one space. And I had a roommate, and this roommate refused to bathe. He was 6'5", 340-something pounds, right? This is my roommate. And I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't a large room, and it smelled like different varieties of Dorito flavors that hadn't been invented yet. You know, and one day I came into the room and it just smelled like a hot bag of spit. You know, like that morning breath spit? It's got that different smell to it. It smelled like that, but hot. And he was laying on the bed with his feet in it, you know, like his feet, because he's so big, his feet always hung over the side of the bed. And I just looked at his feet. Now I just lost it. And I grabbed some soap and a towel. And I said, yo, you going to shower today? I said, and I'm going off on him. And he was like, what I need to shower for, man? It's a bunch of dudes up in here. He was like, why would I shower for some dudes? You know, what does that look like? How that look, me showering for dudes? That's gay. So, you know, I said, listen, I don't care how big you are. If you don't get in that shower and brush your teeth, because it was like probably like a week had went by. I was like, if you don't get in that shower and brush your teeth, I'm going to knock the teeth you got left out of your mouth. And I was not moving a budging. He got up and he grabbed. I said, take my shower shoes. Go ahead. He went and took a shower. And I don't know if he brushed his teeth. He probably at least ran some water across the top of them. But, you know, it gives you an idea, again, of like the extremes that a guy will go through if there are no women present. Like like the degenerate state that some of us will sink to when there are no women present. You see? So you start to understand that feminine force, the male force being the guiding and the leading force, but the feminine force being a civilizing force, you know, being one that helps men to civilize as well as children. Think about how wild little boys are until their mothers sit them down and say, no, baby, you can't do that. You don't pull out your ding dong in front of my company. No, you do that in the bathroom and this and that, you know. So, yeah, you know, I just wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit for the Oshun book that I'm working on. It's just something that stuck with me. I was working on the passage and I kind of leaned back in my chair and I realized, I said, nobody talks about this. You know, like to me, because to me, that's the biggest, you know, when you read the Patakis, I don't want to share too much. I'm sharing a lot of the book, but when you read the Patakis about when the world was built, basically, and they, you know, you always read the one where they say they left Oshun out and then everything stopped, right? And then they realized that they couldn't do anything without Oshun. People never really tell you what that Pataki is talking about. They always use it as a reason. That's why the female power needs to be present. Okay, you can't hear on the high frequency side, and I think that's because someone has muted their mic. Tell me if you can hear it now on the high frequency side. Okay. So anyway, so that point that's being made, Pataki, is that the woman is the civilizing aspect. Okay, so you can't build society without there being civilization. That's why the Pataki says, yeah, they were trying to build and they couldn't because they excluded Oshun. So you built the barbaric society. Okay? Yeah, but that's just the point I want to bring up. But yeah, let me know if I can be heard. I just heard that we couldn't be heard on high frequency, and I think that's because one of our connecting phones was muted. So we're going to make sure that it stays off mute. Okay. If that was the case, and please let me know, anybody who's on high frequency, because I know you guys are also in the chat room, if we can be heard now. All right, so I'm going to take a call. I know we had a couple of hands up on the air. I'm going to take one, and feel free to call in. Again, no subject for the day, so you don't have to call and ask me about Oshun. You can if you want, but you don't. So I'm going to take a call from 856 area code. Young Chief speaks.
Hey, how you doing today?
Peace, brother. I'm doing well. How you doing?
All right. I had thought of something before you came in. You don't mind if I chat a little bit, right?
Go right ahead.
Okay, beautiful. I had thought of something to ask you before you even came on the show, because my mind came to you when it came to me. And that was about the concept of a Dahomey. You know Dahomey, the word, you know what it means, right?
Nope.
Well, let's see if we sync up on what it means real quick, right? My understanding is that it means inside Da's belly. You familiar with Da, right?
Da? The energy of Da?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So they say Dahomey, this is my understanding, Dahomey means the inside of Da's belly. Okay. That was my understanding of the word itself. And, you know, when I talk to the Chinese, I say, what do you call China? They say, we call it the world. They call it in Chinese a particular name, but to them, it was the world. And when I ran into Dahomey, the word and the definition, to them it was, they didn't see it as, oh, it's a continent over here. They just saw it as the world. You understand what I mean? As a full conceptuation of what's going on. So not like a country like, oh, this country next to that country. Their concept of Dahomey as the word was the world. So I was just I contemplated that when I got it, was inside of Da's belly. Knowing what Da is, being inside of Da's belly is a conceptuation of, like, when you look up at the sky, yes, and your concept is that you're inside of Da's belly. The sky is not the same concept that people think of when they look at it at this moment, in this Western concept of what is the sky. You kind of get what I'm saying? You know, like in the mold that people used to think the world was flat kind of concept. I mean, there are different kind of paradigms that people hold life, and they'd be like, they can't even conceive of the world not being flat. That doesn't even make sense. So if you say something similar to that concept now, people will be, oh, that's just crazy. We know we're in the solar system and this and that, and you know, because that's what they've been taught by Western science. Similarly, they were taught that the world was flat, and they lived and died for centuries. Did things for centuries with that concept all over their place, you know, their place of orientation. So I'm just saying the orientation of the mind as being inside of Da's belly, and then look at the world from that point of view. Is that a total different conceptualization of space, time, what's going on? You know, like most people don't even conceive that we're flying through space, even though that's their paradigm. You know, most people don't think of that. We're flying through space. All they know is they driving down the street. It's like very limited to the full paradigm. So I was just thinking about that Dahomey and Da's belly, and I was just wondering if you feel like maybe we need to establish on some kind of way a whole nother paradigm. Not necessarily work within the paradigm that exists, like, you know, we at the prison we need better food, or we need more time for exercise. No, not try to figure out how to live better in the prison, but how to get out of the prison. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was just thinking maybe we need another paradigm altogether and not still try to function so hard within this paradigm. You know, just to make a reference, Neo thought he was something when he was handing somebody with the rabbit something undercover and they handed money for this program and all. He thought he was doing things, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he was still within the matrix. He wasn't out of it. Right. He wasn't even doing it no danger. He was still so far, you know, until he really, and that's what I'm saying, until the paradigm actually changes. It seems like maybe that's why I had thought of the idea of Dahomey, the full concept of what that means. And then it made me think of you, because you're the only person right now that I have heard, you know, any connection with, even through this wire, that might have an idea of what I'm talking about. You know, that's how I feel. Maybe it's 100,000 people or millions. I don't know, but right now, you, right? We would want that. But right now, you're the only one I know that can even entertain it, you know.
Well, I mean, everything you're saying is right and exact. You know, well, let me say this. Everything you're saying is right and exact according to how I feel about it. You know, and what that basically, I'm just going to mute you for a sec there, bro. I guess that wasn't you making all that noise. But anyway, everything you're saying is right and exact. And I would say, you know, thank you for that, of course, that we do need a paradigm shift. And you gave an excellent example. I think that a lot of people, I hope people kind of meditated and reflected on one of the examples that the brother gave about being in a prison and just trying to, you know, rally and argue for better food. The fact is that we're still in the prison. And I would say one of the things to consider is, like he asked earlier, you know, I didn't know that Dahomey meant in Da's belly. However, I did know Da. And Da, coming out of the Fon, you know, the Fon folk, when you have that energy of, I think I got disconnected. Please, everyone, let me know if you can still hear me, because I think our host has just been disconnected. All right. Okay, if you're in the chat, okay, you can hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah, something's up. So anyway, going back to that idea of Da. Da means like the ruler, the high ruler, the most exalted. Da doesn't necessarily mean God. Okay, and it's also important for us to understand. Talking about paradigm shift, and you know, brothers, he's talking the right language, because you know that's my thing. So, so that's why I'm also I'm appreciative of the brother's phone call. The thing is, a lot of times we attribute everything to God or things to God without understanding that not every nation, not every person in the universe was or is as insecure as we are. Not everything was so deficit of a maternal or a paternal energy that it needed to have that vibration that we know as God present. You know, I was watching something recently, and that was where the noise came from. I just need get some of that noise out of there. And you know, sometimes it's a little annoying when you speak to people, or you hear people from traditional systems, and they make these huge assertions in order to make people outside of those traditions feel comfortable. So the person was like, yeah, well, you know, even though I practice Yoruba, it's all the same. It's all one thing. I don't care if you're Christian or Muslim. We're all praying to the same God. And it's like, no, you may be praying to that same God. I'm not. Okay, so all that one God stuff, no. If anything, I work with many gods. And I can say that unapologetically. And I'm basing that off of your perception of what a God is, because I don't even deal with the God thing. You know, that's for children. You need a God. So when you have that idea of Da is really the chief or the ruler. And this takes us to the understanding going back to the show I did on royalty. I urge you all to check that one out if you didn't hear it. And I broke down the significance and the necessity for royalty in an indigenous society. Sometimes we don't understand why the chiefs and the kings and the princes and the princesses are so celebrated in indigenous society, and what it means and how that energy is reflected throughout the cosmos of the ruler. So when you have that ruler and you have that chief in your village and they're local, that's where generations and generations and generations of power have been stored in that line. And it reflects something that is occurring in the cosmos. Okay? So the same thing when you're dealing with the Dahomian people, and you have this concept of Da, which we know we have in the Bantu or the Yoruba as Dada, which was, again, the one who handed down leadership, because it was Dada, who was Shango's older sister, who said, I'm going to give you the throne. So we understand that the leadership or the royal line comes from the woman, right? It's handed down from a matrilineal aspect, okay? But yeah, that concept the brother just said, being in Da's breath and belly, okay? Because now that I break it down phonetically, that I do understand it. Homie, I know is belly. So Dahomi or me or me is belly. So ho somehow in there must be like in. But I'll now that the brother shit, I'll look up the phonetics later. But so yeah, that Da vibration. When we talk about changing the paradigm, let's say if we were to go with what he's saying, right? Let's say if we, we're hearing his perspective, we're like, we like that. We want to go in that direction, right? Then you would be going into the belly of the chief or the belly of the ruler. Now that's a huge paradigm shift, because that means now that we have to have a community, and within that community, you have to have some type of head. You have to have some type of ruler or some type of leader of sorts. And even if that ruler or leader can be someone who's disincarnate. So that's what a lot of times people don't understand about the chiefs in the African society. It's not the focus on the individual, but that individual represents a set of principles and norms that they can't deter from. So really the ruler or the leadership is actually, in many ways, disincarnate. All right, and it's that current ruler or leader that's in place that's typifying the ancient principles that collective wants to live by. So that paradigm shift that the brother was talking about, he used Matrix as the example. Man, I would say then they should have all been coming underneath the leadership of Morpheus. And if you see, in many senses they did. In the belly was Zion. Zion was at the center of the earth, which represented the soul, right? And then you had the scene with Morpheus in there, and he was speaking, and everybody started dancing and stuff, which, was really an orgy. That's what it was supposed to be, but they couldn't show that in the movie. But that's why, while they were dancing, Neo and Trinity were having sex, because the symbology there was that. And I've told you guys before in mythology, whenever you see dancing, fighting, or having sex is all the same thing. So to see a bunch of people dancing like that represented an orgy. Okay, so Morpheus was like the high priest raising up that energy through in Zion, or the center, or in the belly of the earth. He was that high priest there. He was that magi of the earth. So yeah, great point the brother made. Thank you for that. Of course, the Da energy, or being in the belly of Da, changing that paradigm, it will require, if that's paradigm that we want to move into, separation. It's not the first time we heard that one. We heard a lot of people talk about separation before, right? But now to be a separatist is almost like saying you're a terrorist. People are scared to say that now. Like, I feel like we need to be amongst ourselves. We need to, because a lot of people do feel comfortable around people who are like them. And, we see people in other communities. I'm in the New York area. So you go into Chinatown, the signs are in like Korean and Chinese. They don't even need your money. It's like, listen, you don't even need to be able to read the sign. Keep driving through. Harlem is that way. Just keep driving up. They don't even need your money like that. So there's a level of separation there. And even when you look at the police force in Chinatown, whenever they're paired up, there's always an Asian along with someone else. You don't see any. Well, I haven't any black cops down there, but you'll see a European and an Asian. But you don't really see two Europeans in a squad car driving around Chinatown. So they make sure, even if you're going to police us, you better make sure there's somebody here who speaks our language and somebody we identify with. So it's just something to kind of think about what the brother said in terms of creating new paradigms means that we're going to have to totally divest and divest out of the paradigm that we're currently feeding that is keeping us suppressed. Like arguing for better books. We need an African American curriculum in the schools. Yeah, I mean, some of that is good because at least it serves as a bridge for people to get out of there. I mean, you need to fight this thing on multiple fronts, but that ain't the answer. That's just some reactionary stuff. Let's go march in the streets because some coach called a child a nigger or something like that. It's just reactionary, and most of the time the activism is reactivism, but a proactive stance would say, you know what, while you guys are marching, you keep doing that. Don't stop, because some people are only good for that anyway. Just like some lecturers are only good for reporting the problem. That's all they're good for. A bunch of stats. Well, in 1933, they came out with this book that said this, and in 1978, they came out with this book. That's all they're really good for. Okay, you keep doing that because it's probably not in you to be Morpheus. But while you're doing that, which it does serve a purpose, then other people need to be building on another piece. Everybody doesn't need to do the same thing. Plus, because you would draw too much attention to yourself anyway. So there are certain people who are going to do that, pass the baton off. They're going to do the handoff. There are certain people who are going to stay in some of these institutions, and they're going to be the ones walking around with cowrie shells and kente cloth, and they'll kind of help to bridge people out of those institutions. And then eventually, everybody's got to come out. Eventually, or everyone gets destroyed. Those who don't come out will get destroyed with the institution. That's just how that works. All right. So we're going to take another call from the 361 area code. And Sister Kim, if there's a call on high frequency, just be sure to let me know, please.
Okay. Yes.
But on 361, you're on Chief Speaks.
Mickey, my brother. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm sorry to diverge from what you and the previous gentleman was speaking about, but I'm dealing with a certain path, and it seems like you may be the type of person that can help me work my way through this.
Okay.
Forgive me. I'm trying to find a way to approach this. This is what I'm dealing with, man. I relate to you. The first thing I say, I guess a good way to transition is I relate to exactly what you just said, bro. I'm from the south side of Chicago, but I find myself living in the country in South Texas. And I know I didn't understand what you just said until I moved out of my area. On the south side of Chicago, it's amazing. They teach us, you know what I mean? Everybody's the same. We all one people, red, brown, yellow. But then when I moved to South Texas, I was like, cool, because part of my family is Puerto Rican. And I'm actually Akan. My father is Akan, and my mother's history is Choctaw. So, if anything, I'm a super mixed person anyway. So it never bothered me in Chicago. But I moved to South Texas, and it's like 90-something% Mexican. And, which once again, it still doesn't bother me. My wife is Mexican, and ironically, she had a previous child that's half Jamaican. So I'm, household, a Mexican household with a half quote on. Oh yeah, you know what I mean. So, which is cool. I'm 100% on that. But it's amazing to me how I found myself so comfortable in the country. You know what I'm saying? Like coming from the big city, and for the longest, I doubted myself. Because, I had certain family members who were like, you just upped and left us. But I just didn't see the city, especially not Chicago. We all know what Chicago is now. But I want you to imagine me leaving in 2007, in December. So it's basically like when I left people didn't understand why. But I have a long memory. I call it a long memory. I remember the 80s. I'm 35, but I remember the 80s when we had our own community, a real community. Like, we shopped in our own stores. You know what I mean? I went to a elementary school that was mostly black. You know what I'm saying? A high school that was mixed, you know, but it was mostly black. And when I hit college is when everything got intermixed. But I accepted it along the way. So I guess that's a good transition to what you were saying. And same thing with our Chinatown is I took my wife up there. Like, matter of fact, last time we was in Chicago, and you tend to notice that, they'll take your money, they do business with you, but when they see you in their establishments, that's really not what they're expecting, nor what they're desiring. You know what I'm saying? Like, they had their own community. But anyway, to get to what I call for, I'm trying to figure out if it's time for me to have a still heart and stay where I'm at, or if it's a reason why my heart keep pushing in a different direction. Not away from where I'm at. Just to keep it real with you, I'm doing all right financially, but I'm not financially independent. I don't have a mortgage. You know, we living on farmland. Just like when you talking about Oshun, I was like, oh, man, that's right up my alley. When you was talking about cultivating the land, because we got chickens, we had lambs, we got rid of the lambs, and I want to put some cows back on the land. You know, I'm not good with growing plants. I keep it real, but I just built a mini greenhouse, and I was like, by next harvest season, I want to teach myself more about the plants. So I'm moving in a direction, and I'm moving towards independence of my family, because I look at my kids, and I'm like, I don't want my kids to have to be dependent on this system. And I'm also looking at real estate and gathering personal wealth, not for me, period. And I've told people to ask me, like, if it was just me, I wouldn't care. I really wouldn't care. But I look at my kids, and it changed my perspective so much to realize, and especially coming into, shall we call them, indigenous belief system of my people, how we do come back. And we come back through our blood relatives, and we're supposed to prepare that path, and, you know, for the ancestors to come back, and we're supposed to create what would be described as heaven on earth as best as we can. As human beings, we're supposed to. So I'm looking at this like I'm doing good, I'm doing all right, you know what I mean? But I just feel like right now I'm being pushed to buy some real estate. But what's happening, that's where my heart is, but what's happening is I'm being pushed away from it by forces outside of my control. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like I know realtors, like, take, for example, another step, you know, I built my mom's a hair salon, and, you know, it was good, and moms appreciated it and all that, but the hair salon in the long run didn't last 5 years. You know what I mean? Down here where we're at. So I feel like, is it that just I need to stay still financially and just, you know, focus on other things, like where I'm at spiritually, and focus on the kids? Or, you know, basically, how do I decide what my next move is, or is my next move just to stand still?
Well, there's a couple of pieces here to address. First off, my first counsel would be, you might want to get a spiritual reading. You probably.
And I'm 100% interested, man.
Okay, so that would be the first thing I would say, to go more in depth, because I'm going to share some things, but of course there's some things I'm not going to say on the air. But I would say that, number one, what you currently have in terms of the agricultural piece is what probably 50 to 60% of my listeners are dreaming about every day. You know, I wish I could just get on a farm and grow some food and have some, you know, da-da-da-da-da. So in terms of this whole red, black, and green movement, or this movement towards some level of indigenous liberation, that's really, you know, a lot of it, that's what it looks like. 70% of it looks like some land where we're growing our own food. Because building a shelter is not difficult, especially with some of the technologies that have been revealed to the world now in the form of like earth bag building and straw bale and hemp and even just building a cheap cabin. We know we can build structures very cheaply, so the food aspect trumps everything. But what you need to do is you need to think about your children. Okay, and I'm not saying that like you haven't been thinking about your children, but what I mean is this. When you're thinking about making the moves that you're thinking about making, you need to first check and say what's best for the children. Start from that perspective. So if you're in South Texas and you're in a pretty isolated space, right? Mm-hmm. You probably sounds like you're probably not near any quote unquote terrorist targets.
Not by a long shot.
Right. So so there's no reason why there would be a whole lot of militarization around where you are, except for the border patrol. Okay, we have some static there. With the exception of the border patrol, the main thing you want to look at in terms of where you're at is strategy. Are you in a strategically intelligent space where if something was to pop off or whatever, would you have to worry about cartels coming up from Mexico taking your farm over? Or would you be cool enough with them to handle that? Or worry about more realistically those border patrol cats coming and trying to take your farm over? In terms of buying real estate and getting wrapped into that, you kind of have to be careful with some of that. Yeah, you can build wealth through some of that, but unfortunately, in the conscious community, I'm gonna mute you for a second because I think we got some static. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we had some static coming through real loud on his end, and I know sometimes it's hard to hear. So you're still on the line, bro. I just muted your side. What I was gonna say is that we have to be careful sometimes. We have some very intelligent, I would say hyper intelligent people in the quote-unquote RBG/conscious community. And some of these hyper-intelligent individuals, they have a way of really bringing us into their mission because of their high degree of intelligence and, more importantly, their mastery level that they're able to exhibit over the English language. As much as we curse and we spit on this language, when we see someone who can really function as a wordsmith, we're very impressed by that. So you have individuals like that who have a way of kind of weaving you in, and then they'll throw in some street colloquialisms, in between that, and then you'll feel like, okay, I can really relate to them. And then what they'll start telling you about is buying real estate, changing your status, this and that. I'm not going to go through everything because I don't want you to feel like I'm targeting one person. Because I'm not. But sometimes through our movement towards indigenous liberation, we get yoked right back into a fight dealing with paperwork. You got to get this paperwork, sign this, sign that, sign that, sign that. Get you some real estate, not just estate, but real estate and this, that. So we're making these really deep investments right back into an American paradigm. And you got to be careful, man, because some of these people will distract you from what you already have. Like, you got a farm. Now, I know I can already sense that there's some things with that, okay, that, but if you get a reading, we'll talk about that. But the bottom line is, look at what you're able to show your children today, right now. That level of independence, that level of, it's something when you can go out into a yard as a child and you can put together anything you want. I'm telling you, when you got sons, and I'm speaking from experience, and you hand your son or your sons a hammer and nail, like, because I used to always have pallets and stuff, because I used to sell artwork many years ago. I actually had a storefront. And because we used to sell the artwork, a lot of the stuff that we had came in on pallets. Like a lot of the pictures and the frames and the woodwork and stuff like that. So we had all these pallets in the yard, and I'm telling you, man, you give your sons some hammer and some nails and tell them they can do whatever they feel like with the pallets, You'd be surprised. I'm talking about 8, 9-year-old children, and they'll rip them apart and be building robots and clubhouses and stuff like that. But it does something to their psyche when they see that they can terraform a space. You see, and you don't necessarily get this all the time in the city, unfortunately, because everything is nailed down, so it can't be stolen. But in the country, it's like, man, you can build things, and so there's a certain level of liberation and mental and physical freedom that you can offer to your children in a space like that. So if anything, that needs to be cultivated and developed. That home base needs to be cultivated and developed before moving beyond that. And I would say anything outside of that, you might, like I said, you might want to get a reading. We could get deeper into it in terms of if you should make moves and things like that. But you want to think about militaristic strategy. Anytime you're living near a border like that, and Texas is a Lone Star state, so they do what they want. When you're living in a space like that, you want to think about that militaristic safety. Northern Texas may be a better move. Definitely not as hot. But those are the things that you want to consider, all right? And I know it's a much deeper call. Much deeper question, but there are some other aspects to that I can sense that probably should not be shared on air. Okay. And with that, we're going to go to our next call. Actually, we're going to skip the next one. We're going to go to another one. I don't think we've gotten too much of this area code. We'll come back to it. So everybody's on. Don't worry, we're going to get to you. 248 area code. 248, you're on Chief Speaks.
Yeah, Share Lafayette.
Lafayette.
My Babalao is incarcerated. He's been incarcerated now for the last close to 20 years now, and I'm working on extricating him from that situation. But because of that, my communication with him is a lot more limited than I would like it to be.
Sure.
And that's pretty much the reason why I'm on this call right now. But I have a situation that I've been kind of dealing with for a while now. My son, when mother was pregnant with him, there was a lot of stuff going on. We went to get the ultrasound done, and they were telling us that it was just like his head and his limbs were really they weren't growing. So they were saying that he was going to be born with a rare form of dwarfism, and they only expected him to live for maybe a few hours. And they were even talking about bringing in specialists from other states just to examine him, because there's not a lot of scientific history on or data that's been recorded on that type of dwarfism. So, that's to the level it was at. So I went and I started doing research on a lot of the signs and symbols that she was telling me that she was witnessing. She was saying that she would see, it had a lot to do with birds. Said that she would see like birds that would be flying in the sky, and she'd look up at them and they would just like fall out the sky and drop dead. Or she said birds would be flying and they would slam into her car and break their necks and die. She said that she saw, she would dream about owls. She said that she saw a vulture feeding on a carcass while she was at a stoplight. And we're in Michigan. There's no vultures here, so I started doing research into these things, and it seemed like it all came back to one particular entity, and this entity is called Lilith.
Lilith.
Yeah. Yes.
You said? Okay.
Yes. So I went and to the point I didn't really know what else to do. I would, and her whole attitude had changed. She became really, really, really malicious. A lot of attacks on me. I would lay down salt lines or try to sage, and she would sweep up the salt lines, or tell me she didn't want that sage around her, or whatever I tried to do. She just So I went in. When I looked into this entity, I found that it was these three supposed to be these three angels, and so I wrote down their names, and I did like a certain little ritual, and then for 3 days I would take their names that I wrote the paper on in Hebrew, and I would while she slept, I would place the names over her stomach, and I would say little prayers, and then I would take them in and I would put the piece of paper in his crib, and so the third time I did it, the paper disappeared, and so we went back to the hospital 2 weeks later for an ultrasound, and they said that his limbs had grown a lot since the last time, and so he was born, and when he was born in perfect health. Now here's where it's still the strange comes in my inquiry comes in. I went to the hospital room because he was born in perfect health, but he was also born a month and a half premature. So he was small, so they had to keep him there for a while. But I went to his hospital room, and I asked him. His mother wanted his name to be Henry. I wasn't feeling that, but I went and asked him. I said, "Do you want your name to be Henry?" And he shook his head no, slowly. Shook his head no. I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you want your name to be?" I wanted his name to be Kokwai. I said, "Would you like your name to be Kokwai?" And he nodded his head yes. And when he was still in the womb, I yelled through her stomach, and I asked him what his name was. And according to her, I woke up out of my sleep, and she heard me say the name Amari, and then I went back to sleep, and she told me about it the next morning. So I asked him that. I said, "Is your name Amari?" When I asked him if his name was Amari, he paused, and his lips moved as if he was speaking, and a black smoke came out of his mouth and floated up in the air and disappeared. So, to this day, I don't know what that means. And I don't know if anything I'm saying right now. I will assure you that I'm not psychotic. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I know you're not.
So I wanted to ask you about that. If you had, if you could offer any clarity, and just besides that, right now I'm at a point where his mother is she's trying to keep me away from him. She's we didn't stay together. It seems like after shortly after he was born, she I'm not sure what it was. He was when we brought him home from the hospital, he was like automatically like a daddy's boy. He would cry. Only time he would stop crying is when I would hold him. His first word was daddy. You know what I mean? Like it seemed like she got more and more. It's like she got jealous or something. Like she got jealous of that bond, which
that happened.
Strange. Yeah. So she started actively attacking that bond. She would, it started off with her, she would lay him in the bed next to her, and I would walk in the room and she'd just be looking him in his eyes, just laying there staring him in his eyes for, extended periods of time, which I thought was strange. And, she would make sure that he slept with her, and the problem came in was at first when I tried to take him out of the bed and put him in his crib, because I thought that was, maybe that might be a hindrance to his psychological development as a young man, that codependency on even on sleeping with his mother. And when I did that, she it actually got to the point that night where she physically attacked me. Physically attacked me. She pulled a knife on me. All of this because I just wanted him to sleep on his own in his crib. So since then, it's just been attack after attack. Now it's to the point where, she's in the courts, trying to appealing for full custody rights and possessory rights, and I mean, there's actually she filed a motion for a hearing this Wednesday. So just completely just trying to take my son away from me. But anyways, I want to ask you about that, about the situation as far as, what you thought about that.
Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to say is I commend you for riding with your Babalao. He's incarcerated, and, you still claiming him. You still riding with him. And that's beautiful. A lot of times people don't understand that just because you're in this tradition, however you came into it, the rain falls on everybody. And sometimes you're put into situations so you can perform a certain work, but just because you're now a priest or whatever doesn't automatically mean that you now get a perfect life. So I commend you for definitely riding with him like that. Now, as far as the situation with the child, I mean, obviously, warning number one, everyone listening, don't ejaculate inside of a negress. In fact, don't even sleep with a negress, because when you sleep with the negress, things that you wake up with when you pull back. I don't blame her for anything she's doing. The only one who's at fault here is you, because you should have known better. If she wasn't conscious and she wasn't about this before, then this is not the person that you would go to co-create with, because now you don't know what you created. You don't know what this boy is going to grow up to be now. Because all that good stuff you're giving to him, he may turn around and say, nah, I want to be like, Gucci Mane at the end of the day. You want me to be, what's his name? Lupe Fiasco, but nah, I'm Gucci Mane. So he can go either way with this. That's the danger of doing that. I wrote a book on that called Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. You got to be careful with stuff like that. Now, the truth of all of this is, and this is one of the things that I want you to think about so that you don't go crazy. The most important thing with your son, and I'm not talking about every son, every man who's listening, your son doesn't need you as much as you think he does. Okay? That's how he came out. When you said the word Amari, right, you brought the real son out. Okay, that's when he actually, that was, look at it like this. When you said Amari, that was like you spraying 30 gallons of water out of your mouth and initiating him. Okay? Now, the word Amari, the name itself is Yoruba. Okay? And a lot of people think it's Arabic. It's not actually Arabic. It's Yoruba. It's Bantu. It means like that which is strong forever. Wow. So that explains that dwarfism aspect that he first came with, because the dwarfs represent eternity or immortality, because a dwarf is a small child that remains a child forever. It's immortality. Okay, but Amari itself means that's Yoruba. Okay, so he always has been and always will be. And he always has been strong and always will be strong. He doesn't need you as much as you think he does. Okay? So even that connection that you shared with him early on is because he knew what was going to happen. He knew. He said, let me get my hugs in now, and let me get, let's get our bonding experience in now, so that way you won't forget me and I won't forget you. Okay? But right now, in terms of dealing with this woman and whatever I don't know the situation. I don't know why she has done what she's done. I could imagine. Like you say, sometimes jealousy does ensue. And a lot of times when you're dealing with some type of mysticism and the other individual isn't, and you have children, their fear is that you're going to create a child that isn't going to want to have anything to do with them in later years. So what she has to do now is to make the boy not yours. She's got to go. Right now, she called her father, which is the state. She said, "Dad, we got an uppity one. Spank him," because the state can make you do things that she can't, and that's what she wants to see. Okay, she wants to see you broken because she can't break you. She can try to hurt you through the boy, but because you got a Babalao and you're dealing with some higher sciences, you have a means of quick recovery. You go cry. I'm sure you cry probably every other night. You know, you'll cry, you'll be hurt, and you'll feel all of that. But then you can go and do some spiritual work and feel like, okay, I got a little bit of my strength back. But she knows, okay, well, let me sick the state on them. Let me sick those dogs on them, because they'll also protect me, because they're always going to stand behind the negress. They're not going to stand behind you because she's doing their work. You know, it's almost like a cop who kills a black child. They're not going to punish their own people for doing what they sent them out there to do. You know, so it's the same thing with her. So you know that whatever you do in defense of your home, in defense of your family, it has to happen through magic. Now, I'm sure people will tell you, go file this paperwork, go do this, go do that. The state is not a third-party biological parent, so therefore the state has no legal obligation or responsibility to care for a child unless said child is a ward of the state or a ward of the court. In that instance, the child would have been orphaned, but this is not a child that you orphaned because you did not give up any of your parental rights at any point. Even if she's awarded full custody, doesn't mean that you gave up your full parental rights, which is different than custodial rights, but in the same instance, the state has no legal obligation to step in at any time. So that's the legal aspect of it. All right. So legally, you don't have an issue. But you got court officers, when you go to court, they got guns on their sides. And if you don't shut up, they're going to lock you up for 14 days for contempt of court. That's the reality. So you got to use the magic. You got to use the magic to get through a situation like this. But what I'm saying to you, which I think is important, so that you don't lose focus, is that your son is fine because he's stronger than she is. And there's going to come a point, which he probably already is at that point, where he's going to be like, I can't see my daddy because of you. And he's going to raise hell. And she's going to eventually be like, I didn't go with your dad. It's going to be one of those type of situations. You need to come get him. It's going to be one of those. And that's the type of spiritual work that you want to do. You want to make him a terror in that house. Until I am reunited with my father, I am going to tear this house up until you reunite me with my Baba. Okay? So that's the type of work you do in that situation. But this is what happens when you lay down with a zombie. These are the type of situations you invite the state into your life. 911 is on her speed dial.
All right.
Excuse
me. Go ahead, my son is he's now 3.5 going on 4. So and he's a real he's a real interesting character. I mean, like, it's just the way he behaves, man. It's just it's really difficult to explain. But at this point, I mean, my actual plan is to I was planning on she filed this motion for that, so I was going to file a motion as well, and the motion I was going to file was going to be a Rule 5.1 constitutional challenge to just challenge the whole entire validity of the of the whole dang on thing, the codes and everything that they have that they're using to foundate this whole situation on.
Listen, you can do that, and I'm with you. There's a lot of different methods you can come from. You can use the federal manual on state child support, which lets you know that child support is regulated by the federal government, and then you go into court and you say, okay, well, what branch of government is over this family court, and they have to tell you if it's judicial or executive, and they're going to end up, if they ever admit it, they're going to tell you that it's executive. So if it's executive, then this is a corporate process. There's a whole lot of things you can go into. That's great. But listen what I'm saying to you, brother. Because you can beat it as far as the court is concerned, right? But then you still got this negress who's going to do everything in her power to take that child from you.
All right.
Okay, the court didn't work. All right, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move. I always wanted to live in California or Atlanta or something, and I'm going to move, and I'm going to take the baby with me. You can visit, though. You see? And then every moment she's with the boy, she's going to be telling him, you know, your father's crazy. He practices voodoo, and we're going to start going to church. We're going to clean ourselves up, and this, that. So you have something bigger to fight. Once you get beyond the court battle, even if you're able to win that, it doesn't win this woman's heart over. Her heart will still be in a place where she's going to create hell for you any moment that she possibly can. And the more that boy grows up to be conscious, the more of a man he begins to look like and sound like and act like, the more she's going to hate him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the long fight. The court thing is easy. That's easy because, you know, their process is so raggedy and so illegal that you can break down the illegalities of that quite quickly. That's why you have these mafia-style judges who will stand in front of you and say, I don't care what you show me. Sit down and shut up. They'll just do that when you start coming with all the paperwork and trying to get them to conditional acceptances and all that stuff. You know, I don't care. Sit down, be quiet. You know, they'll do that thing because you probably know more law than they do at this point. Right. So that's not even the issue. And the same thing with your woman. The judge may rule a certain way, and your woman may say, I'm going to do what I feel like. I don't care. And there's no recourse for that. Just like when a woman gets child support, she doesn't pay it. When she's ordered to pay child support, she doesn't go to jail for that. She doesn't get a license taken away. None of that. But you will. Ultimately, the fight and the battle is not just with the courts. That's the little battle. The battle is, what is she telling your son, every single night? She's trying to strip away that eternal strength that he has inside of him. That's what you're fighting against her turning him into a mini Negro.
Right.
That's where you need to place your focus. Don't worry about the court thing. You know you're gonna breeze through that. That's gonna be whatever it's gonna be. The long haul, because remember, she's a woman. She's more powerful than you. Okay, how much magic you doing? She got something you don't have. She got a vagina. Okay, so your work has to be on making her an ally and no longer having her be your enemy. That's when you go to Shango and you go to Oshun and then you give offering to the Aj. You don't ask them for anything, but you just get cool with them. Say, here, they know what the situation is, but you don't say it. You just say, here's this, here's that, here's that. But then you go to Shango and to Oshun to give you charm. So she starts to hate you less. You know, you can't get around it. I'm telling you, I don't care if she's a Negro or not. The vagina trumps everything. That's why you're conscious, you doing Hebrew rituals and everything, but you still had sex with her, even though she wasn't into any of that, because the vagina trumps all of that Yoruba stuff. that soft, squishy yogurt box known as the vagina. Warm chocolate yogurt. So that's what you got to do, my brother. You gotta work to. You got to start planting subliminal suggestions in her mind through your work, your nighttime vulture work. Okay, that's when you go into her dreams and you start telling her he's not your enemy. He's your friend. He's your friend. You start working that angle.
All right.
Okay.
I think I actually have another. You know, I basically have I have a wife now, so
so then she needs to be working towards, and you need to be using that vagina to battle the other vagina.
Yeah, and her mother actually told me basically just that. She told me, she told her, she was like, you need to write a letter. She told her to write a letter, and write a letter as if you're her. And in that letter, I want you to write, that how sorry you are about how the things you've done with this child, and try to use this child in that way. And you come to your senses now, and you woke up, and and that the child is going to be available to him whenever it is that he wants. She told her to write a letter, and she was like, read that letter every day. And so she was basically telling her to do a form of magic.
That's a ritual. Listen, I do that. I do stuff like that with my clients. One of my clients who I know is listening right now because he listens to the Sunday shows, we did that with one of his supervisors when they tried to give him a crap shift that was going to make it so that he couldn't, the whole child care with his daughter was going to get messed up. And I said, write a letter. And we did it at the Ogun Shrine. We did it here at the shrine. But I said, write a letter and write what you want that boss to say. He wrote the letter. We went to Ogun with it. And he came back. He said, oh, my God, you won't believe I got a letter. They didn't change my shift. And it was like verbatim what I wrote. So that's a real ritual. Yeah, do that. Do that. And if your wife is bleeding, you put that blood on that letter because that's what makes it real. Blood is what brings things from heaven to corporeal manifestation.
Right.
You know,
the blood contains the energy.
Yep. So you take that. I mean, the way I am, I'd sign it in blood, but because this is a serious thing, man. This is your child, and this is a boy. You know what I mean? This is your reflection, man. This is not something you just let. You know, this is not an individual you just let go by the wayside. But like I said, bottom line is, man, he's stronger than you and her put together. He's Amari. Don't worry about it. He's Amari. He's the Amari. Telling yourself that. Whenever you're thinking about that boy and those nights you're crying and you're like, man, I miss my son. I wish I could play with him and all that stuff. And what is she telling him? You just keep remembering that he is the Amari. And he picked you too. You didn't pick him. He picked you. He said, I need to come through this pathway to really get my Amari on. Okay? All right. Okay, brother. So we got some more calls on the line I need to get to, man. But, you know, if you want to go deeper, well, you got a Babala you can work with. So, you know, tap him up for any rituals he might suggest to. And, you know, you can go from there. And if you need any extra help, you can always get a consultation. I would clear it with him first, though. And, you know, and you can go from there. All right. Thank you, my brother. Anytime. Thank you. Kodupe. Anytime, my brother. Be strong. All right, cool. I know we got a bunch of people on the air. Yeah. Oh, you had a question you wanted to cover before we go to the next call, right?
Oh, there's a question in the chat room from More Love 13. And they say, greetings. Can a so-called black person reincarnate as a different race, such as a white person? And if so, wouldn't that make them our ancestors or part of our bloodline? If this is true, is the Black Power movement causing division? And the answer is yes. You can incarnate as a different race. And it says, she asked, will that make them part of our bloodline? And I would say yes. In that family bloodline, it would make them a part. Is it causing a division? Yes. This reminds me of a movie I saw last Strong, and that was The Exorcism of Emily Rose or something like that. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with you, Chief, when we spoke about this. And my interpretation was, please correct me if I'm off, is that we understand that our power, our DNA and our Akashic records lie in our blood. That is, you know, the Ashe is in the blood. Your Akashic records is in your blood. So when you're doing these rituals to your Egun and you're calling forth these energies, you are tapping into the power of your bloodline. You are those ancestors, you know, come again, as we say. So to marry into or have a child by or whatever, when you mix bloodlines like that, now you're tapping into your enemy's bloodline. So now that blood is running through you or your child or whomever the person is. So now you have two warring energies inside of you. You have this blood flowing through your veins. So now you're susceptible to not only the problems and things of your African lineage, but also you're susceptible to those demons in the opposing bloodline. So to me, this is a dangerous thing, because as I was speaking of the movie that I saw, when I saw this person like being tormented by some spirit or whatever. This is the first thing that came to mind. I was saying that she is just the recipient of those demons being awakened through her bloodline, her, that Akashic record being opened, or that those ancestors who tormented and tortured other races of people for centuries and centuries and centuries. You can't, people have tried to, Dr. There are a few people that speak on this when they speak of cognitive dissonance. When you just try to kind of sweep this stuff under the rug. Well, these things can corrupt your spirit because it is in your bloodline, in your DNA. So when you have two warring energies in that bloodline, to me, I think that's a very dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. And one of the things, because More Love 13 said this is Sequoia. So this is Sequoia. Oh. Those of you who are longtime listeners, you know who Sequoia is. And her husband, man of great character, a.k.a. Randy. Okay? But the thing is to keep in mind, and I want to say this to you, Sequoia, this better not be a question based on some disagreement that you're having with your husband. Okay, this better not be some, RBG disagreement y'all are having and you trying to get, because some of y'all do it. Y'all call this show to get like I'm a lifeline, to get lifeline answers when you run out when you argue. All right, so that better not be some of that stuff happening. I want to say this too, man, and you guys, we got to really get beyond some of the stuff. I'm not saying you, Sequoia, I'm saying in general. Everyone who's white ain't white. Right. And everyone who's black ain't black. We got to go deeper than what we see with the physical eye. And I'm not on some it's just all about energy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to learn genetics a little bit. Because everyone who appears to be Caucasian is not white. Or who appears to be, who is white is not a Caucasian. Just like everyone who is quote unquote, and I mean, no one's white and no one's black, but you understand what I'm saying. And everyone who's black is not necessarily an African. The nature does some very interesting things when it's toyed with, or when it needs to be manipulated for a certain cause. Again, what I spoke about in the start of the show was that grasping the root of divine power for several reasons. One, because I was tired of seeing people getting gypped by different priests. And I'm like, nah, you do your own divination. You do that. But aside from that, I was like, man, we need some more black people writing some books about black tradition. This is kind of crazy that everybody's writing our story. And not that everybody is doing us dirty in the literature and stuff like that, but it is a different twist and a different swing when you're sharing your own story. It's just like if I tried to write a story about Columbus, you wouldn't want me to write about Columbus, but Truman, or one of these generals or war leaders who I don't have a huge issue with because it's war. But I'm not going to have the same perspective as someone from his own genetic clan, So yeah, you got to sometimes look beyond that. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the information that initially came forth about our traditions did come from quote unquote others. So I have said in previous shows that, yeah, I do feel that some of our Egun did reincarnate as quote unquote others because they knew that this is the only way this information is going to come forth at this time. Because in certain time periods, we couldn't get on planes. We couldn't get into into museums. We couldn't get into the pyramid tombs and things like that, and kind of bring this information back, to where we are today. Even having some of the resources that people have, you look on YouTube. I know Sister Kim was showing me this video a while ago of this Caucasian female who was in Yoruba land, and she was speaking Yoruba, and she lived there and everything like that. And I said, listen, my hat goes off to her because she actually went to go really study that language. She speaks it better than I do. Now her parents may have the resources to send her to Nigeria. She may not have the same concerns that I have. You know, so she may have the resources where she could go spend a year or 2 or 3 years in Nigeria and learn the language and this and that and so forth and so on. We may not be able to do that because we got rent to pay and we have children when we're not supposed to. So, you know, we're 21 years old and we got 15-year-old children and all kind of craziness. Or, you know, we have a lot of social issues that we're still trying to get through. So a lot of times by the time we come into our consciousness, we have like a lot of baggage that we have to clear up, whereas certain groups, they don't start with that baggage. A lot of us come out of the womb, like the brother who just called. Think about all the things that his son is going to have to break through to even express his consciousness. Look at how he already started with a medical condition. It just gives you an idea. He already started there. You know, he comes out, he's okay, but then now he's got this war between his parents while he's still an infant. So he's got to fight through all of that and then try to find some consciousness on the back end of that. Right. You see? So sometimes other people are able to access things more quickly and more easily than the rest of us can. So I definitely feel that, yeah, some people have incarnated, or our people have incarnated. We have that power because all the spectrums we can produce anyway have incarnated in order so that we can push a certain agenda. I do feel that. Mm-hmm. You know, now, I'm not an advocate of interracial relationships. I'm not an advocate of interracial dating. None of that stuff. For me and my family, you do what you want to do. But for me and my family, that doesn't work based on the mission and agenda that we're trying to accomplish. You know, that would be a distraction, and it really will be undermining. Because, again, many of us start with so much crap. We got to sort that stuff out first before we start letting the rest of the world enter into us, you know, which is what I said in another show. You know, we got to learn to be in the marketplace without the marketplace being inside of us, you know. So that would be my take on that. Now, is the RBG community promoting division? I hope so. We need to divide so we can figure out who the hell we are. Excuse my language. So we can figure out who the heck we are. We need to divide. Being in the midst of all, and just so everyone knows, we have about 3 minutes before we go into archives. So if you're listening from the internet, I know a lot of you are, and you want to keep on with the discussion, 347-945-7680. I don't have the high frequency number in front of me right now, but if you call 347-945-7680, you won't get cut off when the archives kick in. But heck yeah, we need to divide. We got to figure out who we are, how we act. Hey, here's an easy one. We got to figure out how we eat. You know, when we come into consciousness and we want to start eating healthy, we eat all of the health food from around the world. I always said that was crazy. Oh, well, you know, this Chinese herbs. I'm not Chinese, man. See, you know, like what is the African medicine? You know, and so even some of that makes you sick. You know, well, this herb they use in India for this, and this herb they use in Australia for that. Yeah, you still doing it. You still doing it. It's pizza and bok choy, you know, and whatever else, and baklava. But it's just now it's herbs, you know. So we gotta. I hope RBG community promote division. Let's divide, figure out what the heck we are. Then we can join the world, present world commodities to the international market. You know, because incense and black soap isn't going to make it, but for so long. You know, present some real commodities to the world stage and present who and what we really are as a culture to the world stage, which is, we're going to have to admit, is going to be a hybrid of African culture and New World culture. We just got to admit now, we're a different animal now. You know, we were manufactured for something different and we have a different mind. Okay? But now, go ahead, sis. Yeah, I could tell by all of them that you wanted to jump in.
It just made me think of what you've said a lot of times, too, about the ancestors fighting over the child. So not only, you know, is that child going to have some internal issues, you know, psychological issues because of the wars going on in that blood, but you also have the ancestors fighting over the child.
Right.
So, again, like you said, you know, be careful who you're procreating with, creating a life with.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're at the stage now, we're in an information age, everybody. So when you're laying down with people, if they're ignorant, they want to be ignorant. So don't, I know, especially as men, we always feel like we can change these women, which you can change them. And we're in archives right now, everyone. I think. I think we're in archives. Right, we are, right? Okay, well, if I'm hearing you, then we must be. I just didn't hear the countdown. But anyway,
I heard it.
So, that's right, because you're the host. Duh. All right, so yeah, we're just in an era now, everyone, where it's like no compromise, man. You got to be like Fela Kuti. No agreement. No agreement today, no agreement tomorrow. None. I had a woman tell me 2 nights ago, we were talking, woman I haven't spoken to in years, and we were talking, and she said, she said, why'd you stop calling me? I said, because you were moving too slow. I wasn't interested. I'm doing something here. And I told her one day, I said, I'm never calling you again. And I've known her for 13 years. And that was it. So, we ended up speaking the other night. And she said, well, can we be friends? I said, no, I don't befriend women. So this would be the last time we speak. You don't have to call me again. And she was trying to present this whole argument, like why we should be friends. I said, no, I don't befriend women. And I said, first of all, you're boring. And women in general are pretty boring. You don't have anything I want to talk about. We're not of the same culture. I'm going through the list. I said, why would I want to be your friend? And then on top of it, because we're not of the same culture, all you talk about is your job, which I find repulsive. So that's a part of the no agreement. Like, people are not allowed to have excuses anymore. We got to get to that point. No, there's no excuse. If you're not about this culture, if you're not about this movement, about this community building, I don't need to have anything to do with you. Keep it moving. Don't even lay with them, because you start to create a better standard, and that's for the men and for the women. We got to create a better standard for people who would choose to be our counterparts or who desire to be our counterparts. We got to raise them up. And men, you got to do that before you stick your ding-a-ling in them. Because once you stick your ding-a-ling inside of them, they don't want to listen to anything you have to say after that. So before you stick your ding-a-ling, see, that's why like a lot of women call up to the show. Anything I say, they're right there. Oh, you're so right, Chief. Oh, that's so true. They listen to me. They listen to me more than they listen to their husbands. But if I were to try to mess with one of those women, now all of a sudden I don't know anything. I'm just as dumb as anybody else. As soon as I stick the ding-a-ling in, because that's the sick socialization that we have in this country when it comes to black men. If a black man likes you, if a black man sees you as a sex object, or if you see him as a sex object, he can't be intelligent at the same time. He can't be a guiding force. He can't be your ruler, or as the brother called earlier, we was talking about the homie, inside of the chief's belly or inside of Da's belly. You can't be in his belly, but at the same time be sexual with him, because you can't be that vulnerable and exposed to someone who's going to lead you. See how stupid that is? That's the stupid mentality. All right, we're going to take a couple more of these calls. I can't take all of them because we got a lot, but I'm going to try to take some numbers that I have not seen. Yeah. I'm trying to take some numbers that I haven't seen before. That way some new people can get in, hopefully. I think this person has been on before, but 862, you're on Chief Speaks.
Peace, Chief. I have been on before, so you don't really have to take time with me. I just want to, give that brother some encouragement because I have been on the opposite side of the situation where I would have done anything to have my son's father be involved in his life. And my son is now 28 years old, and I think psychologically that absence of not having his father there really affected him internally. He doesn't want to speak about him. He could recall twice in his life that he's seen him, and the last time he seen him as an adult, and he only showed up at his college dormitory just to determine whether he was in school or not, because he had to pay child support. And he only began paying child support when he was like 14 going on 15 years old, because the state finally caught up with him. And I mean, $83 every week, that's pennies. You understand? For a young man growing up. So I want to encourage that guy to do whatever he possibly can to try to maintain or reinstitute some type of relationship with his son, regardless of what the mother is trying to do, because in the long run, they grow up with a hole in their hearts. And I don't know why sisters keep their kids away from their fathers, especially males away from their fathers, because no matter what we do as women, we cannot replace that male energy that comes from that biological parent. And the only time it's somewhat acceptable is if that parent is actually on the other side. So, I mean, I'm giving that brother much love and encouragement. I know what he feels the way how I felt. And if it was up to me, the state never would have gotten involved, but I had no other choice because I needed 2 years of public assistance so that I could finish college. And no matter what I have done, I have never been able to fill the hole in my son's life. And I mean, I got married when my son was, going on 5, but I was with my husband from ever since he was like 3 years old. And my husband was a good stepfather to him, but even my husband could not fill that void. To this very day. Especially when our kids came along, the ones that we produced together, and I think my son began to see how my husband just loved his boys and cherished them. And I mean, I can't swear for when I'm not here, but I've never witnessed where he left him out. He deals with him differently. It's a small thing that you may see, and that didn't develop until my other 2 sons got a little older. But I don't think it was so different that my oldest son was left to feel like he was rejected or not wanted by my husband, but my husband was never able to fill that void.
Thank you so much.
I
for this.
want that brother to stay encouraged whatever you can. And I want sisters to wake up too. Stop using these babies to hurt these men because they're not with you any longer. No matter how hurt you are, stop doing that mess because it's not about you no more. Those kids are going to grow up and there's going to be something missing and it's going to run deeper than we could ever imagine. I'm living with it today. I'm a witness.
Give thanks. Thank you, sis, for that. Thank you very much. That was powerful. Thank you. All right. Yeah, that was beautiful. I mean, that's something I couldn't say. I'm not a woman. Haven't been in that situation. That's why I encourage the sharing. You see, that's why I encourage the sharing, and that was powerful for that brother to know. And I'm gonna just say this though, not to be contrary, but to add on to what the sister is saying is that anybody who would keep, especially a conscious man, away from his children, or any man, because I've seen this on the other side now too. Because remember, because of my profession, I deal with every type of angle that you could imagine. I've seen men keep good women away from children. You know, when men are awarded to children, that's not a sister. That's not a brother. That's an enemy. And you have to look at them just like that. That's where sometimes it gets difficult. This process becomes hard because it's like miscegenation. It's like the Roman soldiers come through your village, they impregnate all the women, and now the women, you know, where they should be killing them, when they come back in the bed to lay with them, they're like, oh, but this is my child's father. It's confusing. It's almost like if you watch Roots and you look at Kizzy, and when Chicken George wanted to kill Tom Moore, and she was like, Tom, that he your pappy. Pappy, she finally told him. You know, he wanted to kill him, which he should have. You raping my mother and all kind of this crazy stuff and whatnot. You know, he had found a gat because it was around when Nat Turner had this revolver, and they found remember the dead body with the gun on it, and he hid the gun, and he was like, I'm gonna go kill Massimo. You know, he said, he your pappy. You know, so that's not a sister, man. That's not anybody who keeps a child in this day and time with everything that's going on now, especially a man away from a son. When you got young black boys being killed wholesale, being molested in churches and in schools,
I mean, we have so many situations where our children need to be protected in this season, and you take the main person, or maybe the only person in this child's life who would take a bullet for this child, who would do 50 years in jail so this child could be free, and you extract them out of that child's life. That means you hate that child and you hate that other parent. That's obvious. And that's why as a child gets older, your hatred for the child starts to come out more. It always happens, and I deal with this in counseling with people. It always comes out. So I would say, man, for those of you who are going through that situation, man, you got to see that once you see that other parent has aligned themselves with the state, you got to see them as nothing less than an enemy, man. And me, I deal with old country rules. These people, honestly, if we were in the old country, I'm like, man, it'd be a lot of spears. It'd be a lot of spears through a lot of hearts. As far as I'm concerned, you don't need to walk in. Anytime you molest a child, and I want you to understand my defining of molestation of a child is not just a sexual thing, but when you take a child's innocence, when you put a child in a situation where they either have to lie to another parent because you've created a split camp, or they have to deny their love for another parent in front of you, or you turn them, you poison their mind against another parent, that's molestation. You've taken the innocent and pure feelings that they're supposed to have for their other parent, and you've manipulated it for your own purposes and retarded reasons. You just molested that child. You need to be taken off this planet. That's Chief's feelings. So, you may not want to be a part of my community, if that's because I feel like you deserve the worst punishment possible for doing something like that. You don't molest children, period. There's no coming back for you. Come back, man. You try it again next life. That's my feeling on it. You don't need to be here right now. You can come back. I can't control that. You try it again next time, but this time you got to go. You ran out of quarters or tokens. Game over. You molested a child's innocence. You got to go. Okay. So again, I thank the sister for that guidance, for the brother. And I'm sure a lot of sisters probably have a similar thing, and very interesting before we go to the next call. The other day I was coming out of Whole Foods, real quick story. And I ran into a woman who used to work at a school. She still works at the school. She runs the after school program for a school that one of my youth went to for like just a short period while we were organizing something with our homeschool. And I used to go to the school, and every Friday I would read stories to the children because I got a humongous library of children's books, good books, And I would bring a book every Friday, and I would read to the children. And this is not that long; it's a couple of years ago. And I was doing that for about a year. And she had seen me coming out. I hadn't seen her in a while, but we sometimes bump into each other sometimes. And she had told me that a relative of that particular child had came into the school riffing. I had just found this out and said they didn't want me coming into the school anymore, reading stories to the children, because I was only reading these African stories, and I wasn't, I was indoctrinating the children with this African stuff and not showing a different perspective. Now, mind you, the school was like 80 to 90% African. Okay. And it's not like I was reading stories like, the Nat Turner, the children's version, and of course, all throughout the week, they're being indoctrinated with something that's non-African. Mm-hmm. So but I never knew anything about this. She just shared this information with me. I was coming out of Whole Foods, and it was a whole big thing. She said her manager came down from the district, and all this was about me. And I didn't know this. And she went to bat and was like, listen, he's refreshing, to see a black man come in here, and he reads to the children. All the children love him. He's funny, this, that, but he's strong. He disciplines them. He doesn't let the boys act. She went through the whole thing. And she said, if he goes, I go. And she had been at that school for 7 years at that point. And they backed off. But she said it was a huge deal. And where she would have expected some of the other female parents to come forth and say, yeah, like, Yeah, you know, because they know me as Baba Haru. Yeah, like Baba Haru comes through and he's a good man and da-da-da. She said everybody was quiet as church mice. And it actually ended up being she and I think there was a couple other brothers, and even one of the custodians came and like came to bat for me and was like, no, he comes in, and because they were like, well, he doesn't have a pass for the school, and you just let him in, because I used to come in through the back door and everything. I didn't think it was a big deal because nobody ever said anything. But it just kind of gives you an idea of how black manhood is regarded as a declaration of war inside of an institution. You know, and again, not like I'm going there and I'm riling the children up to some type of insurrection. I'm just going in there and reading stories, Anansi the spider stories, things like that, Ajapa the turtle. And I'm reading these stories to the children. Then when it's time to go, I'm walking out the door and going about my workday. You know, and I wasn't getting paid for it or anything like that. It's just that one of my youth was there. And I wanted my youth to know that no matter where they're at, Baba's at. So anybody or anything that goes on in any space, you always know that Baba is looking, and you're seeing Baba look in people's faces, walking through the hallways, meeting the principal, going to the classrooms. So everybody knows, like, yeah, somebody loves this child. And there were 3 children there that I was raising at that time. 2 of them were not my biological, but well, they're my children. They know me as father, and that's it. So that was also a little issue, because it was like, well, what's his relationship to these other ones here, you know? But I wanted them all to know that, and when I say all, I'm talking about the facilitators in that institution. Somebody loves this child. So before you think about doing something stupid, look at me. You can feel from my handshake. You can look in my eyes, and you can see that I'm a violent person. I'm just being nice right now. So before you think about doing something stupid, just remember that this child has an adult somewhere that can get here in a couple of minutes who loves them. You know? So that caused issues. So I say that also to all the brothers, you know, and conscious women out there, when you're showing that degree of knowingness, that's how you're going to be treated by the system. And like I said to her, if I would have came in there smelling like urine and like rubbing my nose and talking about how I just got out of rehab, they would have treated me like royalty, because they love that. They love that, you know. Or I'm up in there crying and talking about, yeah, you know, it's hard out here, and y'all need to know, you know, listen to your teachers and do good in school, because I mean, I'm just really trying to get my life. If they would have loved me, they would probably put a picture of me up in the school. But I'm coming in there, my skin's looking clear, my eyes are clear, my spine is straight, I look strong, and I'm sitting down and I'm talking to these children, and you know, that's a declaration of war. Okay? So let's keep that in mind. And Hadassah 1965 says, Bergen County got some very strange, quote unquote, black folks, especially those who live in the neck. That's where this school was, by the way, Hadassah. It was in the neck. Trust me, this does not surprise me. I'm not saying everyone, but I will work with some, and they have blown my mind. Yeah, people here, even though it's the New York border, they are very country. And this is a Klan town. You know, this whole Bergen County area, everybody has been locked up here. Everybody. You know, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the YouTube videos, so you know some of even Chief's history. All right. So we're going to take maybe 1 or 2, and then we're going to have to hop off. I'm pretty sure this one. We'll try 718. We're going to give you some New York love. 718, you're on Chief Speaks. Uh-oh.
Hello?
1-8, I think. Oh, there we go. Okay. You're on Chief Speaks.
Actually, I don't live in New York. I live in California. So this is greetings. It's brother Akil. So
peace. Oh, hey, peace, brother Akil. Is this the Akil?
Yeah.
From the class Akil? Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, originally I lived in Brooklyn, and I joined the military. I'm still in the military, so me and my family, we live in California. So
yeah, Cali. Okay. Cali is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I don't want to leave.
I don't blame
actually,
you.
I wanted to comment on what the brother talked about earlier, because I feel like I'm a product of one of those households, and not so much the mother with malicious intent, but the father, and they ain't get along, so I'm just at the helm of it. But at the end of the day, it really becomes the child's choice, and they realize, sometimes children can realize, like, I don't have to choose between parents. My father passed away in 2011. I got his name tattooed on my shoulder. And when my mom saw that, she was a little upset, but I knew where it was coming from, and more like she felt like she did everything, and my mom was working 120-hour weeks. But that love for my father is that love for my father because I am my father.
Right.
As far as like my intelligence and who I am and the things I say, like other family members will be like, "Oh, you sound just like your father," and I would laugh because it's not like he had a lot of time to raise me or influence me in that way. So that's just a natural thing. That's a natural process. And then one thing I wanted to comment on was a couple weeks ago, I remember during the show you saying, how come these younger brothers with families don't call in and don't ask questions? But I really have to say it's because when I listen to the show, I try to listen. And if it's for me, I take it. If not, I kind of leave it alone. But I take what's for me and what I can utilize. But as far as, calling in and trying to get more advice pertaining to me and my family, it's more like, I'm just trying to figure this thing out as we go. It's just me, my wife, and our son. He's going to be 1 in October. So trying to figure it out as we go. I don't want to take too much. I don't want to call and get too much advice because I don't want to, I want to be able to say, you know what, I did this on my own. Trying to recreate the situation and not, there's going to be no single parent household at any point in time that my child is rearing up. That sort of thing. And if I can do that on my own, that makes me feel more of a man. Like I did my own research. I did it by myself. Not saying that I don't want the help, but more so of coming into that place of power for me. That's how I feel about it. That is it, Chief.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Brother Akil. I appreciate that. Now, I'm gonna put you on mute, but I'm gonna say something that's gonna be maybe a little against a little bit what you said. So I want to just warn you now before I put you on mute. Okay? But I'm riding with you. One, because you're a family man, and as all you guys know, anytime a family person, man or woman, calls in, I always give them extra because, hey, man, that's a revolutionary act today. All right. But what I'm gonna say, and thank you also for sharing that perspective, man. That was deep on like what he shared about how he grew up and some of the things and how he still had the connection to the father. So definitely, brother, earlier, please, I hope you're I don't know if you're still on the line, but I hope you got that. And I always tell parents, man, this is what you got to be careful of too. When you're trying to, like, he didn't say his mother tried to turn him away, but when you do that, you got to always remember that they're adults longer than they are children. They're only children for about maybe 14, 15 years. Then they have decades of being an adult. So you can only manipulate them but for a couple of years. And then after that, they might buck back. Or they may come to another conclusion, and they're going to have longer on their own to formulate and let that conclusion marinate in their mind. That's why I always say, like I'm always surrounded by children. I have children, as mean as you guys think children probably think I'm mean too, but they still love me. They know I love them. They know I'm strict. That's what it really is. But I'm surrounded by children. Anybody ever comes to my house, they always see there's always children walking up the driveway. Like, who's that? Somebody just walking to you. And they walk right in the house. They know which doors to come in and all that. And, it's all good. Right? And I always let the children know my door is always open. You can come here anytime you want, day or night. You can come here. They leave their clothes here, and now they're all older now, so I got like their phones and phone chargers and stuff. But what I do is I throw that stuff out. That's a little hint for you too. When you got children who are not respectful of their possessions, like one of my youth left a jacket here. Well, I just threw a joint in the garbage. Now you don't have a jacket. Okay. So anyway, so that was a good point he made. And the point I'm saying about me having children around, children always remember who is kind to them. You think about, I don't care how old you are, those of you who are listening, think about your childhood. Go back. And you always remember those neighbors or those aunties or those uncles who were kind to you. And you remember those who were just evil and mean and surly. You remember those. You don't have nothing to do with them, even now that they're older. But the ones who showed you kindness, may have been just one or two things. You remember them. And keep that in mind, But to what Brother Akil was saying in terms of trying to do it on your own, the reason I'm going to say a little bit something against what you're saying. I understand you. And you're young, so you got some dragons to slay. You want to go out there on the flying Pegasus with your sword, and you want to slay some of these dragons. We need that. We need some of these young gunners to go out here and take care of some of the stuff that, as we get older and we lose testosterone, some of us men just don't care about as much anymore. But you got to always remember that you're working in a collective, man, and it's the European thing that says. That focuses on individualism, and you're not a European. If you're a European, I say, okay, cool, that's fine, because they're about the Lone Star again. Going out, I got to make my mark. That's their thing. Okay, cool, that works for them and their children. But us, our thing has always been about the collectivism. How is it that we build upon each other and that we do things in a group and we do things together and respect and enjoy the hierarchy of what's in front of us? So even like you're saying, I do my own research. Well, whatever you're researching and finding, you're still getting it from someone. So none of these things you're necessarily deriving on your own. I understand your point, though. Trust me, I do. I do understand it. But just keep in mind, throw in a little extra there, and just think about it. You don't have to, because maybe you weren't built to. Maybe you were built to be exactly what you just said. And we need some of that too. So I'm not trying to take you in a totally different direction, because you need those cats who are going to say, you know what, F this. I'm doing it this way. And then they create that new paradigm that the other brother was talking about. So that's why I don't want to totally, I say I'm going to disagree a little bit, but that it's me disagreeing. And a part of your way, you might be like, I hear you, but I'm doing what I'm doing. And obviously I have some of that in me, because if I didn't, all of you wouldn't be listening to me. All of you are not interested in Yoruba. You're not interested in Orisha, but it's the perspective that I bring, which I know is different, which had me to have to step outside. I mean, I haven't had an instructor in years, even though I cite some of them in my book, or books. I haven't been working with anybody in many years. And people even who you may hear me call Baba or whatever, I don't come under them in terms of learning, because I've been like the ODB of this. Like my perspective has always been so off that it's been hard for me to find someone that I could get under. And I'm talking about years ago when I first started, that would be able to take all of that. I mean, I remember when I first came into the tradition, literally like my first or second day of instruction, when we were learning about statues. Well, I was learning about Orisha statues, right? And I asked, I'll never forget, I said, can we put sperm on the statues? First thing I asked. And my instructor, he was cool. He was like, actually, you can. He was like, that's a higher level. That's, I'm glad you asked about that. So I was like, oh, cool. I was like, what about blood? I was like, what about if I have sex with my lady while she's on her period, and then when my sperm drips back out of her, I take that and put it into something and then put that on the statue? He was like, he just looked, he's like, whoa. He was like, all right, slow up. That was like day one or day two of instruction. I asked that question, and it never, even though he was like, no, don't do that. It still was kind of like, I'm gonna do that, So we need those mavericks too. So that's why I'm saying, Brother Akil, I'm not trying to totally shoot you out of the sky, because we need to have those mavericks. But keep in mind that our culture is about not repeating the mistakes of our Egun, of our ancestors, not having to hit every wall on our own or take every bump and bruise, but going out there and getting new bumps and bruises. You see, you're gonna make mistakes, man. You can't avoid it. It's like I'm gonna make mistakes, but I want to make new mistakes. I don't want to make the same old mistakes. You know, like I don't want to be assassinated by my own people. I don't want to be assassinated by an agent who infiltrates my organization. I don't want that. That's happened so many times now. Like I'll be taken out, but don't take me out like that. I want a new type of assassin. I want one of those Illuminati weapons to take me out. That's what I want. I want some new stuff. Like explode my head, you know, at a retreat or something. Like send a laser down from a satellite and make my body catch on fire. I want some new stuff. So I'm not going to walk in the same path that all my ancestors have walked in that have been taken out in the same types of ways. You see, I'm going to make new type of mistakes. Like somebody might say, oh, so you should have wore the hats lined with copper wire. That keeps the Illuminati laser from blowing your head up. Okay, new mistake. You know? So, you know, I would just add that in, brother, you know, but again, I don't want to detract you too much from what you're doing and too much from your mission of saying, because at the end of the day, you got to be the alpha dog. You know, and you got to be the alpha for I'm about to say pack. I'm talking in wolf terms, but that's because I talk in dog terms a lot. That's another thing. But you have to be the alpha for your family. Like you said, it's you, your wife, your son. But it's not just you, your wife, and your son. There's a community, and that's what you have to strive towards, that collective, man. Because you and your wife and your son alone, you ain't going to make it. You'll be picked off within 10 years. You're not going to make it by yourselves like that. So that collective or that community becomes necessary. And it may mean that you have to be the leader of said community, but you got to have that group, man. Nobody makes it without a group. No matter what you see by the time they get on TV or whatever, no one makes it without a group. And you know that already from being in the military. Generals don't make themselves. Commanders don't make themselves. You know, it is the people that they have under them who are subservient and who can follow orders properly and execute their plans that raise them to the levels that they end up at. All right. So with that has been our segment. I know we had some questions. You know what we're going to do with all these comments and questions in the chat room, because there was a lot of them. And sometimes while I'm in the middle of talking, I know some of you guys, you ask questions and I can't actually focus sometimes on both of them. That's why I miss them. It's not because I'm ignoring you. I want you to know that. But sometimes it's just difficult for me to kind of look at both of them at the same time. But yeah, you know, so we're gonna break. And those who didn't get the calls in, and we got more calls in the air, we'll get you next Sunday. And for whatever chat room questions that we didn't get, we'll get you as well next Sunday, or we'll answer them under the YouTube video that we're gonna put up of this show. All right. And again, to reiterate the announcement, November 1st, Masterminds Mondays, Anu Asafo, Thunderground Thursdays, and Foundational Fridays will be going direct to YouTube. Please use the comment section to ask your questions or put your whatever's on YouTube. And you all have Gmail accounts or YouTube accounts, because that's where the world is going, because Google is now Skynet, and they're the ones who are going to take over the world one day, just like you saw in the Terminator. All right. So until that sweet and blessed day comes, I am Chief Yuya. Sister Kim, do you have anything you want to leave the people with?
Sure. Just reminding everybody to register for the webinar before the 13th. So we got 1 week left.
1 week, for sure. True that. All right, everyone. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all, tomorrow, really, Masterminds Monday. But we'll see you again with Chief Speaks next Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. All right? Peace.
Greetings, all. This is Chief Yuya, and if you're interested in learning how herbs can be used for healing and magic, then join us on September 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern for a power-packed Anu Nation webinar entitled The Spiritual Gifts of Herbs. The Spiritual Gifts of Herbs is a live webinar and will be hosted by host of Anu Asafo, co-host of Chief Speaks, member of the Doodle House Spiritual Center, and our resident alchemist, Kim. Some of the topics covered will be the use of herbs for specific uses in spiritual practices, discerning which herbs are best for men and women, and why certain herbs are associated with male or female deities, as well as creating a working relationship with your ally, herbs of nature. Those who RSVP early and attend the event will receive 25% off of all Anu Nation products and services. To RSVP, simply go to anunation.org/events. That's ANUNATION.org/EVENTS and register before September 13th. Learn how to choose herbs to create effective rituals by attending the Spiritual Gifts of Herbs webinar. I'll see you there.